Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back with you for the 176th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. There we go. Got it fast. Like the FedEx guy. We are thrilled to be joined by, what do we got here? We got 23 people in the room, and all of you on YouTube and all of you on PRN. Great to be with you. In these interesting times, we have many crises to discuss. Today, we're going to start with a brief report on the attack on trans people around the country. I've also been reading astounding stuff about abortion in Ohio and elsewhere, where these state legislatures refuse to abide by popular referenda. It's really astounding. But we're going to get a report from BRYNN TANNEHILL on the trans community. Then we're going to, which will be brief, and then we're going to go to VINNIE DeStefano, our man with Julian Assange. There are big doings this week with Julian that we really need to plug into, and Vinny's going to give us the rundown on that. We're then going to go back and discuss the rise of the labor movement. We've had some major, nobody's paying attention to this, but we've had major victories for the labor movement for the first time in decades. And it's really, really critical that the organized labor movement move ahead. And then we're going to also talk about the campus demonstrations, and then and which will be open mic. Basically, we want everybody to chime in on all that stuff. We have incredible energy stuff going on in California, which we'll talk about in the second hour. We've got Ron Leonard with us, the great pioneer of renewables. But in the second hour, we're going to be joined by John Brakey and Republican Senator from Arizona, Ken Bennett. There are astounding things going on with election protection in Arizona that really are going to affect the whole country. So this is a very big deal. We're going to start that at 6 Eastern Time, 3 Pacific, and give John and Ken, Senator Ken, a major piece of time, because this is the nitty-gritty detail that, in fact, these calls were founded to deal with. And by the way, this is we're going into our fifth year now. We have been doing GREEP for 4 years as of April, and we started in 2020 and to deal with the election of that year, and had a decent outcome. And so we're moving into year number 5 here in May. And so in the second hour, we're really going to do a deep dive on the details of what's going on in Arizona, because John Brakey with Ken Bennett, the Republican senator in Arizona, have done the pioneer work here, which actually may well have decided the 2020 election. They kept Arizona from being flipped in a very, very dangerous way, along with some other stuff. So second hour will be election protection issues. First hour, trans issues. Then Vinnie DeStefano with Julian Assange, unions, and the campus upheavals. All right, BRYNN TANNEHILL, you are a great author, well-known all over the world, real pioneer in trans issues, among others. Can you give us a 5-minute rundown on what's going on with trans issues here in the midst of all this incredible turmoil and the march of the right against the public will?
So what's going on right now is states are continuing to look at bills affecting trans people. Here's the good part, is that most of them are failing. Some of them are going down. In Kansas, there was going to be a ban on healthcare for trans youth. The governor vetoed it. And then one Republican...
Wait. I want to linger on that for a minute. The governor of Kansas vetoed an attack against trans people. That should be up in lights.
That's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that one Republican senator in Kansas, they could have overridden the veto. They had the numbers, but one senator flipped and upheld the veto, saying that it was his view that this was significant government overreach to affect a handful of kids and get tied up in court. And this should be, medical decisions should be left up to parents. And
do you have the name of that senator?
I would have to come up with it, but yes,
Okay,
we can come up with
that's
it.
fantastic. That is a monumental way to start our call. Is that a Republican senator in Kansas upheld the veto of the governor of Kansas against an anti-trans bill? That's phenomenal, Brent. I'm really happy to hear that.
So the Biden administration has also uh, basically come out and said it is their legal position that Title IX applies to transgender students, that you cannot exclude transgender students from
Wow.
athletics from kindergarten through senior year of college, essentially, or through college eligibility. There's 10 states now that are suing the government to overturn this and challenge this in court. We're going to see where this goes. This adds to the list of major trans cases that are going to end up before the Supreme Court. They're going to hear about. They're probably this fall going to grant cert to cases involving healthcare for trans youth and whether it can be banned. Right, because right now we've got several circuit court splits on the matter, including here in Virginia in the Fourth Circuit and in the Ninth Circuit, but you've got the Sixth, 11th, and Fifth saying that you can't uphold these bans. So I'm not particularly optimistic about that with this court. We've talked about in the past what's in the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership. It has talked about how their overarching plan for trans people is to remove any reference of trans people from government, to codify within federal regulations that there's only two genders, which would mean, and that it's assigned at birth, meaning that anybody that has a passport has changed their passport gender marker or their social security gender marker is going to have it change it back. That's going to cause all kinds of havoc. Particularly with people who are still working or people who need to travel. So that's one of those big things. I've talked about in the past how that their goal is to make they regard anything related to being transgender as pornographic. So we're having an extremely pornographic conversation right now because I'm trans. I did pornography in public today when I took my dog for a walk wearing this clothing. But all silliness aside, they want to
Well,
make
one thing. Let me jump in here. The Comstock law. The
Yes.
Comstock law has come into this. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
So Comstock, it basically bans the interstate commerce of pornography or abortifacients. So this can affect transgender people, like you would consider like the Trevor Project. Is that sending pornography to children state to state, even though the Trevor Project is programmed to prevent LGBT youth suicide, right? One of the other things that's gotten less attention, that's buried in the policy, is former President Trump's Agenda 47, which is a series of policy documents on his campaign website. And one of the more they want to ban healthcare for trans youth. They want to ban trans people from athletics. They want to ban trans people from the military. These are all kind of things that are out in the open. The really interesting one picks up where the Cass review left off, which it says that they want to have the FDA start a review to determine whether or not hormones and transgender ideology make people depressed, aggressive, and violent. So with obviously the goal is to have the FDA ban the use of hormones or treatments for transgender people that is off-label use of hormones, because almost all trans medicine is off-label because there's no money in running huge studies on generic drugs on adults. That's just, there's no money in it for a small number of adults. So that's those are kind of the big policy things that are going down that we're kind of looking at as being on the table in the 2024 election. You can see that there are some policy differences here. What's really, really interesting is that for one group, this is very much part of their overall messaging, that it's an election issue that they want to emphasize. Other side of the house would really, really prefer not to. That's one of the reasons why California has a ballot initiative that goes after trans youth, because polling data suggests that people really aren't in favor of letting trans kids play sports or get access to transition-related care, that they're not particularly in favor of teachers hiding from parents if their kids come out as trans. Even if the kid goes home and gets found out as trans, they're end up homeless or beaten potentially, right? So right now in California, they are gathering ballot initiatives for kind of an omnibus anti-transgender ballot initiative that would become the law in California that would do quite a few things. Like I mentioned, no more healthcare for trans youth, no more punish teachers who don't out students, bathroom bans. It's basically a whole list of things that would affect trans youth in California. And the hope is that this is unpopular enough, that trans issues are unpopular enough with the general public that they can help get better turnout in the election for their side, and make headway against the legislature where there's absolutely, in California, the legislature is relatively pro-trans. So they're hoping to try and bypass the legislature via the public sentiment. Whether or not the California public sides with them, despite the polling, is to be seen. We don't know how this is going to turn out. The good news from my perspective is that they need over 500,000 signatures by May 28th. Last I checked on April 23rd, they only had about 200,000.
Wow. BRYNN, that's fantastic. Micah Hirsch, you've been putting some stuff in the chat. You want to pipe in real quick to enhance BRYNN's talk? Very, very powerful, BRYNN. Thank you.
Welcome.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Sluggo. Yeah, BRYNN is absolutely correct, 100%. And I just wanted to add a little bit of background. The trans sports bans have been shown to be arbitrary, unfair, and unnecessary. Studies have shown that after trans girls and women undergo the treatment to transition, they lose any advantage they may have had and may actually be at a disadvantage in sports. So it's just punitive, it's just bigotry and ignorance. Also, leaked emails have shown that after gay marriage or marriage equality, which is basically what it should be called, because everybody should have the right to marry who they choose, provided they're adults. And that statement would frustrate Republicans who support child marriage, of all things, with very young girls being abused and forced into abusive relationships with much older men. So this has nothing to do with protecting children, especially nothing to do with protecting girls. The people who are pushing this have no interest in protecting anyone. This is just a political strategy that they came up with, because after marriage equality became established and the outrage that they expected to happen didn't happen, because most people mind their own business and don't care who marries who, as long as they don't, abuse the children. They pivoted and said, well, there are very few trans people, maybe 1%, 2%, 3% of the population. It's hard to really know.
Lower. 0.5 or 0.6%.
Yeah, and a lot of people may or may not be trans, but they're coming out more often than in the past because there's been more acceptance. Although, as BRYNN reported, a lot of states and a lot of people are harping up the moral panic. And leaked emails show that this is all a cynical strategy to try to capture bigotry and focus hatred on a small minority that is really just minding their own business, that is most likely to be abused and attacked of any demographic. Although, as BRYNN mentioned, the number of trans people is so small, it's really even hard to tell. But we can see how many trans people have been discriminated in housing, in employment, in every possible way. Trans children have been bullied into suicide, have been physically attacked, have been stabbed by people who have been riled up by this moral panic. And I just want to say very, very clearly that this is all the most dirty politics, and it's manipulative and getting these things on the ballot. It reminds me a lot of 2004, when a certain party worked really hard to put a ban of marriage equality on the ballot in Ohio and used that to gin up support from evangelicals who were kind of lukewarm on the presidential candidate. And that kept the election close enough for them to steal it. And it's happening again. And the rhetoric is all rehashed homophobia. It's almost word for word the same language, scare tactics about gay people grooming and recruiting children. And it's really shameful that a lot of people haven't learned from that and haven't reacted with outrage at this manipulation.
I laugh because Perry Kendall has put in the chat, if the radical wrong, I've never heard it referred to, but that's great. The radical wrong can put children to work in meatpacking plants. What's their beef? Absolutely. I also want to, there has been really a sea change in terms of marriage equality. And I'm reminded of Robin Williams' famous saying that it's impossible to ban same-sex marriage because once you're married, it's always the same sex. Sorry about that. I had to put that in. Anyway.
And the other line, Sluggo, is that people would say, I support gay marriage. Why should they get away from suffering like all the straights do?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Brynn, your excellent report. Is there anything else you want to add? I know you're real busy.
So I would just point out that polling data on trans athletes is actually very, very bad for trans people. It is, in fact, something where people don't look much further because they don't want to. They just see this one individual winning, Leah Thomas, or they see a trans Olympian. What they don't see is the data that shows that out of 40,000 female Olympic athletes since 2004, when trans people were first allowed to compete, there have been precisely 2 transgender women that competed in the Olympics, and they finished dead last and 37th out of 42 respectively. If you look at representation of trans people in sports, they are underrepresented. So if they have this massive competitive advantage, why aren't there lots of them, right? If they were just as good as everybody else, you would expect 0.5% of female athletes to be trans. It's not, it's more like 0.05, right? Or 0.05%. It's like 10 times less than you would expect. Very, very small percentage. So whatever advantages there might be aren't translating into winning a lot or being overrepresented at the highest levels. It's left out that Leah Thomas is a one-off, but this is being turned into an election issue because it generates lots of outrage because nobody really wants to do math and go, well, what's the statistical probability if you have this many athletes and this many in the sample size? But when you actually do the statistical analysis, the notion that trans people are going to somehow take over women's sports or destroy them just isn't supported by the numbers. Statistical analysis doesn't hold up the argument. One other thing I'd point out is that the other thing is that these bans do have an effect on trans people. In a country where obesity, diabetes, and metabolic diseases are rampant compared to the rest of the industrialized world, trans kids are less than 1/3 as likely to participate in sports as their peers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Brynn. We really appreciate that. And a great report. Thank you, Mike Hirsch. Let's move on now to the issue of Julian Assange. Wendy, you had a hand up, and then we're going to talk about Julian Assange. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. This isn't, I raised my hand for something else, but I do want to just make a quick point to that. And I've discussed this with Mike before. I think the issue with the sports thing, I think probably comes down to more of like the competitive sports. Like if I have a younger sister or a daughter that is training with someone who might have a different body mass. So I don't want to go into that, but there's a lot of issues, but I fully support the trans community 100%.
Okay.
But I do think sports issue has a lot of nuances to it that are of concern. What I did want to raise was that I found out recently, just through my own research randomly, I didn't find an article on this, which is shocking, but there were over 500,000 women raped between the time that Dobbs happened in 2022 to January of this year. And the FBI suspects that only about a third of rapes are reported. So this is 500,000 reported rapes of women in a year and a half. So you can assume that's double or triple. I'm thinking, just planting the thought seed for further discussion on what those numbers are for trans women when we're having this massive epidemic of
Right.
women that are raped. I mean, this dark underbelly. So thank you for being with us,
Sure.
BRYNN. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bryn. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Wendy.
I will tell
I
you.
want to mention, I was shocked. Is this Nancy Parko speaking here? No?
Slug, oh
It's
no,
Bryn.
Bryn wants to make a
Oh,
comment.
Bryn, go ahead.
I got to log off, but I'll tell you the data. There is almost certainly data right now in the National Transgender Discrimination Survey of over 90,000 transgender individuals. There is a lot of data in there. I'll dig into it and find out and report back to Mike.
I must say, as a sidebar, thank you for that,
You're welcome.
Bryn. I've been watching Franklin on Netflix. It's pretty good, although Michael Douglas is not Ben Franklin. But anyway, it's sort of like Michael Douglas coming to Paris and getting the French into the revolution. But there was a major scene in Franklin, allegedly taking place in the 1770s and 80s, involving a trans issue. I was astounded to see this. So anybody who's interested, the most recent, it's on Netflix, I think, or maybe it's Apple Plus. One of those things, the most recent episode of Franklin had a very interesting episode involving trans issues that you may be interested in. Okay, we have 50 people with us. We are going to go now to Julian Assange with VINNIE DeStefano. Thank you again, Bryn. Thank you, Mike. Vinnie, there are things that, I also, Ray McClendon, it's great to have Ray McClendon with us. And Ray, I'm going to tell you in the second hour, we're going to do a really deep dive on election issues. We're going to start with Arizona, but if you can stay through 6 o'clock Eastern time, I'll call on you first to give us an update from Georgia. John Brakey, who's on the call, is going to be with the great Ken Bennett, this Republican senator, and any updates you could have on Georgia would fit in just right. Okay, John, I'm sure you're good with that. So VINNIE DeStefano and Ray, thank you for your continuing great work in Georgia, which continues to be in turmoil, and can't even begin to describe it. VINNIE DeStefano, what now this week can people do for Julian Assange?
Well, I'd like to open, before I get to that, with a quote, and it's an old quote. It says, "The security of the nation is not at the ramparts alone. Security also lies in the value of our free institutions, a cantankerous press, an obstinate press, a ubiquitous press that must be suffered by those in authority in order to preserve the great values of freedom of expression and the right of the people to know." Now, that quote is 53 years old. Those are the words of Judge Murray Gerfine. He was a Richard Nixon appointee who had been on the bench for a total of 2 months when he was faced with one of the most important cases in our history, second only to Julian's case, and that was the Pentagon Papers case. And I think that is the crux of the issue right here, the public's right to know. And to protect that public's right to know, what Assange Defense is calling on all of our activists to do is every week to make 6 calls, 1 to your own congressman, and then we will pick the 5 congressmen you choose to. I will put those congressmen in the chat here very shortly. I did so earlier, but I'll make it easier for you. And House Resolution 934, it's important you mention House Resolution, is expressing the sense of the House of Representatives that regular journalistic activities are protected under the First Amendment. The United States ought to drop all charges against and attempts to extradite Julian Assange. At this point, there are currently 10 co-signers to this bill. Most of them, I'd say 60% of them, are Republicans. Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and Pramila Jayapal, Ilhan Omar have signed on. But where are the rest of the Democrats? This is a protection of the public's right to know. And so I am going to put this right in the chat right now so you can have it and you can call. As I said, you call your own congressman, but that you call these 5 congressmen.
Vinnie, you froze up on us. Vinnie, are you there? They took you away. Vinnie DeStefano. Okay, let's see what he got up there. Can you put it up on the screen again, Steve? I will say while Vinnie's frozen, that I was kind of PO'd, I think we can say that, to see Joe Biden on the correspondence dinner, which is always, kind of uproarious and funny and all that stuff with all the correspondence. And he's making these great pronouncements about the power of the media, the press, and the need, to quote Jefferson's choice, if you have a choice between government and newspapers, you take the newspapers, but never mention Assange. I mean, total hypocrisy there, that you got a room full of people who could be persecuted just like Julian Assange, and you don't mention him. I'll also say that I actually like Colin Jost, the guy from Saturday Night Live, but he was really not the right guy to be at the correspondence dinner. I think Scarlett Johansson would have been a lot better, actually. All right, we're welcoming Vinnie back into the room here. John Brakey, is Ken Bennett going to join us at 6, or is he on now? John Brakey, let me unmute you here.
Yeah, he's going to join us a few minutes before 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay. All right, then.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have Ray McClendon with us. Maybe we'll go to Ray early and get a report.
Okay.
I got back on.
You're back. Okay.
I don't know what the heck happened. I was trying to post
we never do. So what is the nature of the bill that is
the bill is designed to halt the extradition of Julian Assange to protect freedom of the press, because as Judge Gerfine said 53 years ago, this is really not about Julian. This is about preventing the people of the United States to know what its government is doing in its name. The reason he's being prosecuted is not because he harmed anybody and not because he told lies, but principally because he told the truth about the war crimes committed in our names and our tax dollars, as is the case in Gaza, as is the case in Ukraine, as is the case in so many other places. In this case, it was the Iraq war logs and the Afghan war logs that he released that showed that the American government was lying to its own citizens about what was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan, the inordinately high civilian casualty rates, which the United States government lied about, the war crimes committed by our troops, which our government lied about. And as Thomas Jefferson said, the necessary predicate for a functioning democracy is a informed and educated electorate. And without a robust, free, ubiquitous, and cantankerous press, you're not going to get that. And so that is why it is so epically important, irrespective of what you may think you know about Julian or the case or anything else. This is really about your right as a citizen to know what your government is doing. And House Resolution 934 is simply calling for the extradition to be dropped to protect journalists around the country.
So this is you want people to do what?
What I want people to do.
Oh, he froze again.
No, listen, Harvey, I've got it. He's asking that we call representatives and ask them to sign on to House Resolution 934.
And the text has been put in a chat, so if you want to reference that, you can find your reps at US Rep site and put your zip code in if you want to email them too. But he's calling for people to call their representatives and a certain list of representatives.
And specifically to target Summer Lee, and Mark Pocan and Barbara Lee and Matthew Rosendale, because it seems that, was Vinnie saying that it's mostly Republicans who have signed on to this, and it really should be bipartisan.
That's amazing. That I know we have that extreme right-wing guy, Paul Gosar, who has supported this. You know, life is full of surprises, and there we go. David GURAN, did you want to jump in on this, David GURAN? We haven't heard from you. I'm trying to unmute you here. At any rate,
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are there any senators in support of it, like Bernie Sanders? I know it's a House bill, but eventually needs to go to the Senate.
yes. Has Bernie Sanders been contacted on this? Has he come forward on this? Vinnie or Wendy, do you know if Bernie has been contacted on the Julian Assange case?
I don't think that Vinny's here, so I'm gonna go ahead and speak. I'm sure Vinny's so completely thorough in the campaign, so I'm sure that they've been in contact. I can read you right now the list of people who have signed on. I know that Jim McGovern is one of the co-sponsors. Oh, here's Vinny. I'll quickly tell you the list of people. And so we have Paul Gosar, Ilhan Omar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Luna, Eric Burleson, Jeff Duncan.
Wait. Marjorie Taylor Greene
Marjorie Taylor
Anna Luna.
Greene.
has signed on to this?
Yes.
You're kidding.
And Paul Gosar wrote it. Now, look, this is important to understand. This is not a left or a right or Republican or Democratic issue. This is an issue about defending the First Amendment to the Constitution. And look, I'll be honest, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't like Paul Gosar. But even the stop clock tells the correct time twice a day, and they're right on this. And the unfortunate thing is that the Democratic Party, the Biden administration, is following through on the Trump administration's prosecution. And to what end, I do not know. I do not know why they are pursuing this case when the Obama administration correctly diagnosed it as the New York Times problem. Once Julian is successfully prosecuted with this case, any government anywhere on the planet could go after any journalist for printing truthful information they find uncomfortable and haul them off to their own country to stand trial. That's what this is about. This is perhaps the most important case, First Amendment case in our lives. And, why we haven't got Democratic support right now, it baffles me. It absolutely baffles me.
It is amazing. It's truly amazing. I don't want to get arcane here, but I have actually read the proceedings of the Zenger case from the 1700s, where it was established. This guy Zenger had a newspaper. He printed stuff that may or may not have been true about the governor of New York, the royal governor, whose happens name it was William Cosby. And Cosby sued him and they prosecuted him. And somehow, because his wife Anna kept the paper going, they summoned a mob and surrounded the courthouse and got a decent jury appointed. And as a result of that, the jury ruled, it took them 10 minutes to rule that truth was a defense in a libel case, and that you could, in fact, be protected if you printed the truth. And that Zenger case is the root of the First Amendment and the freedom of the press and the whole deal. And actually, Ben Franklin was in the room. He was not a participant, but he came up from Philadelphia to be in the courtroom for that trial. So anybody wants to talk about the Assange case, you can refer all the way back 3 centuries to the Zenger case. That was really a first in the British Empire. We were part of the British Empire at the time, and nobody in England would have dared to vote that truth is a defense in attacking in criticizing a royal governor. So there you go. The roots of this
Harvey, every time I've tried to post the action that we have for people to take advantage of, that's what keeps kicking me off the Zoom call, so I do apologize to everyone for that. Steve,
Okay.
if you could do me a favor, go way back up to the beginning of the chat, copy that, cut it,
I've done
and
that
paste it.
twice.
Good, thank you.
Yes,
And
well,
the list of reps.
in the chat here, Patricia Gratian has pointed out that Hillary Clinton really hates Julian Assange.
Yeah.
And you know, she would like him right with bin Laden there. So
The third way Democrats have a tendency to hate him because rather than looking in the mirror and seeing the blame for the loss of Hillary's election, they're looking for an excuse somewhere else. And Julian Assange can be excuses. He had about as much to do with Hillary's defeat as I did. Of course,
well,
I
you were
didn't vote for
instrumental in
her.
defeating her. So what can I tell you?
No,
But,
exactly.
yes, Hillary
We're
lost
going to
because she refused to campaign in Wisconsin and
Wisconsin and Michigan.
and she refused to challenge the vote count in Wisconsin, Michigan, and
Not only
Pennsylvania.
that, but one of the things that Julian did point out is in the release of the DNC emails is that they thought, and understandably so, that Trump would be an excellent candidate for her to compete against. Who the hell was going to vote for that buffoon? And yet she lost to him. And I says,
so
it says a
this
great
is
deal about the third way Democrats today.
Yes, this is a tendency. The Democratic Party, these guys, these genius, advisors, love to promote right-wing candidates.
Yeah.
And it's on the presumption that they'll be easier to beat. And then we wind up with them. It's like the cruise missile. Henry Kissinger pushed the cruise missile because he thought it was so insane nobody would go for it. And then all of a sudden everybody fell in love with the cruise missile. So, you know, or even it's like the atomic bomb. MYLA RESON and then Steve.
Thanks, Harvey. I was wondering, Vinnie, can you fill us in now on what's going on with Australia? I know that there was some communication from Australia to the
Yes,
Biden.
there've been communication from Australia, but the push from the Albanese government has been weak at best. There is a huge military deal called the AUKUS deal, which allowed the United States to park nuclear-armed submarines and create an alliance in that area as a hegemon against China. And you'd think that that would give Australia a lot of opportunity to push back against the United States. You want your submarines here? Free our citizen. But the response from Albanese, he's a bit like Obama in that when he goes to negotiate, he moves the goalpost so close to the other side that it's almost pointless to negotiate. Now, there is supposed to be a deal, but we haven't heard anything about that yet. The other thing is on May 20th, the resolution, we're supposed to hear back from the three exceptions to the extradition that were allowed to go through, and the United States was able to provide three, but actually two assurances to the British government that Julian Assange would not be put to death and that would be allowed access to the First Amendment rights in his case in the Eastern District Court of Virginia. However, those assurances are not worth the paper they're printed on. First and foremost, because if he comes back, they only apply to the current charges. He will most assuredly, if he's brought back here, be charged for the Vault 7 releases, the most embarrassing in CIA's history, and he could face the death penalty for that. And they go, well, we didn't do it on one, but we did on the other, so we gave good assurances. And the other is...
Vinnie,
yes?
would you just remind us what the Vault 7 releases are? I know you
The Vault 7, you can't make this stuff up. What the CIA and the NSA had developed was ways to take our smart technology, our Alexas, our Siris, our smart refrigerators, our smart TVs, and turn them into listening devices, warrantless listening devices that would listen to every conversation you had in the privacy of your home. And of course, letting that cat out of the bag was incredibly embarrassing to the Pompeo CIA, and they went after him with everything they had. Now, to go back to the assurances, they assured Julian that he could, at trial, request First Amendment protection. That's the assurance. They could just as easily say, well, no, we won't give it to you. That's to use a Watergate term, a non-assurance assurance. So If you talk to Daniel Hale, who was provided the same kind of assurances in the Eastern District Court of Virginia in his trial, he was a whistleblower that highlighted the inordinately high civilian death toll and that surgical drone program that Obama put into place. Well, his assurances from the judge at his trial were not worth a penny, because when they went to sentence him, everything that he was promised turned out to be exactly the opposite. He was put in a supermax under the harshest conditions and provided none of the psychiatric care that he required for his PTSD that he suffered in killing people from here in the United States with the drone program. Harvey, you're muted.
There we go. Steve Caruso.
Yeah, well, case in point, freedom of speech. Al Jazeera is now banned from Israel under order today. And how many journalists got killed? It's like 120, 180. I don't know what during this war. And the whole thing with war is that the fog is non-existent. We all see what's going on.
Stephen, and you couldn't have said something more important. We just celebrated on May 3rd World Press Freedom Day, and the hypocrisy in DC, where they were obviously, and I think rightfully, calling for the release of Evan Gershkovich. There was not a word about the journalists in Gaza that are being targeted by the IDF forces, targeted. Not a word about Shireen Akila Abdullah, who was shot by IDF forces in Jenin. Excuse me for butchering her name. And not a word about Julian Assange, the greatest threat to freedom of the press. So the hypocrisy in the Biden administration knows zero bounds.
And we also have, of course, had Steve Donziger on with us, and there are the questions of Leonard Peltier and Malia. Let's just hope that this administration, by the force of the upcoming election, will swing and finally do the right thing here.
Well, Harvey, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on here so often and bloviate as I do, because it is only through the collective voices of citizens, not our congressmen, not our senators, and to go back, Bernie Sanders, to his eternal shame, and I knocked on doors for this guy, I contributed money to his campaign, has been abysmally silent on Julian Assange. And so expecting anything in the Senate, anything in the Congress, I think is a fool's game. I think what we need to do is to raise our voices as loudly as we can to force them to understand that this is a threat to the Constitution. Every one of our congressmen and senators, elected officials, swore an oath to defend the Constitution. This case is an assault, a dagger at the heart of the First Amendment.
Absolutely. All right, very well stated. And again, you want people to call senators and congresspeople, support House Resolution 934.
Yes.
House Resolution, what is it?
This is a House resolution. It's a non-binding resolution. So look, it's not even causing a great kerfuffle with people that sign it, but the cowardice that is in being exhibited, particularly in the Democratic aisles of the Congress, is appalling to a degree that I couldn't believe. So, but I think if enough of them call, we send postcards, the calls, keep them coming. Every week, if you go to Assange Defense, there'll be another 5 individuals to call until May 20th when we hear the resolution of this case. And again, Harvey, thank you to giving us an opportunity to bring this case to the public.
Well, as a card-carrying journalist, this does kind of strike home. I do want to. People should emphasize to the Democrats that this is probably the only chance they'll ever get to co-sign a resolution with both Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, who could pass up such an opportunity, for God's sakes? So you got any other extreme? What about Mike Johnson? Has he signed on to this? The Speaker of the House? No,
he's too busy worrying about Armageddon, bringing it forward.
Well, somebody's got to be around to cover it. Okay, thank you for that, Vinnie.
Thank you, Harvey.
Wonderful. I do want to emphasize we're going to have Ray McClendon join John Brakey and Republican Senator Ken Bennett at the top of the hour. I did want to jump in. We have had something we haven't heard for years, so many years in this country, is a revival of the labor movement. I mean, God help us, this has not been happening in our country, which is one of the reasons I believe for the crazy spiraling down into right-wing sentiment all over the country. But the importance of labor unions in maintaining democracy is absolutely at the center of everything. The first people that Hitler went after were not Jews, were not gays, Jehovah's Witnesses. It was, in fact, the unions. Hitler realized that if he was going to wipe out democracy in Germany, even the last vestiges, he had to wipe out the labor unions. So what's happened now is that a major strike has been won, or union recognition at an auto factory in the South, and everybody's, whatever press it's getting behind everything else, is really, it's a big deal. And we did want to have some folks from the actual union movement on who could speak to this. Anybody want to raise their hand and talk to it? But we will, in the future calls, have more attention paid to the union movement, which has been on its heels, since the 60s, really, or at least the 70s. And now we have reason for optimism. MYLA, did you want to jump in on this? And then we're going to talk about the campus appeals. MYLA, reason?
Yes, thank you so much, Harvey. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. You are going to be interviewed tonight by the extraordinarily creative man known as the letter hack, Mark Strackbine. He's going to be drawing you and interviewing you on his YouTube channel. The Letter Hack is the YouTube channel, and I'm hoping that people will tune in and watch the live stream as he draws you. He drew, by the way, he drew the cartoon behind me, Cartoon Me. And he is just an amazing creative force, and I'm really looking forward. There it is. I'm looking forward to the interview. That's the Letter Hack on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the chat.
Well, thank you. Well, if he's going to draw me, I guess I'll have to keep my teeth in.
9:30 Eastern.
Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let's talk now. And we are going to have more on the union movement. Let's talk now about what's going on the campuses. Wendy, did you want to say something before we jump into this? And then top of the hour, which is only 13 minutes away, we're going to do election protection.
Thank you. It's nothing major. I just thought I would give a little quib about the labor movement, since I know you did want to talk about it. So sure. Yeah, I mean, if everybody, like Harvey just elucidated, like there was the rise of the auto workers and the UPS workers. Nobody realized like how, and nobody realized like how bad their conditions actually are. And I think social media probably has a much larger role than we're realizing, because people are like, I mean, I don't even have to explain the exponential effect that has. And then you have Chris Smalls organizing for Amazon. Somebody just put that in the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name. But you have the youth. Like, I worked in restaurants and bars for over 25 years, and it just wasn't even a thought. Like, it's not even like a possibility. And now people are becoming more educated that it's possible to unionize. And then I think another huge impact, like our reason is the cost of living. Like right now, you can't just work a job and survive. Nobody can. And you have an entire, like, multiple generations that are not going to see retirement. Like every day is a struggle for survival. So people are like looking for ways, because they're being shaken out of their comfort zones and they can't take care of their families. So unions, like, they're the non-political way to affect policy. And it's finally catching on as this incredible mechanism that people don't realize that they have the power to take hold of the control of being in kind of basically a feudalist society. So we'll definitely, I have some people that will be able to come on in the future to talk more, but the UPS workers, the auto workers, the steel workers, and worker safety, what happened in Ohio, all of these things are finally contributing to the largest probably population of voters in the country. And so I thank you, Harvey, for wanting to talk about this, because the working
Right.
class is.
Well, the most recent major victory has been at UAW in Tennessee, and you know that, and it is a huge deal. What I can't understand is what's happened to the Postal Service, and I want to get somebody at a future date to talk about this. I'm kind of biased. I was in business with my dad for 20 years. We sold uniforms to postal workers, and I love postal workers. They are the coolest people that you could ever imagine. And well, I mean, you know, they're just the heart and soul of America. And why Biden has not gotten rid of this creep that's been destroying the Postal Service, this guy, DeJoy, a badly named guy, but he's been in there almost 4 years now under Biden. And his sole purpose is to destroy the Postal Service. And the Postal Service has two very powerful unions, the National Association of Letter Carriers and the clerks. And he hasn't budged, this guy. And I don't know why Biden hasn't gotten him out of there. Go ahead.
They want to privatize. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they want to privatize all the carriers. So, I mean, you have the whole world is ordering online right now. You have Amazon that's making Walmart, the world's largest monopoly, look like nothing. And so now it's like, and with like the federal workers, you have to have federal protections. You have to take care of our precious postal workers. And if you privatize, then prices can skyrocket, and just like everything else. That's my reasoning, I think.
Well, it's really a nightmare. I hate to see it. You know, you now think a week to 10 days to get a letter. I mean, inside Los Angeles, you can mail a letter inside Los Angeles to another piece of Los Angeles, and it won't get there for 2 weeks. I think I once mailed a check to MYLA. It showed up like months later. I mean, you know, and to have a non-functional postal service, which was founded in the days of Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was our first postmaster general. He viewed it as the internet of the day, and it ran. The mail rain, no snow, no sleet, and the mail was delivered on time. This guy's destroyed the place, and he's still there. It's unconscionable. And it also, as you say, Wendy, you're right. Why the Democrats want to privatize the Postal Service? You have two of the most powerful unions in the country, these two postal worker unions, and they'll go. That's why they want to get rid of the public postal service. It's outrageous. Lynn and then Paul.
I mean,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wendy, real quick.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I mean, the Democrats in office right now. I mean, they're name only. They're paid by the same people, and paid off by the same forces. But you just reminded me of another point, being that I read during the free speech movement about 100 years ago, almost, when it was starting, like right before the beatniks. Apparently the zip codes were put there because they wanted censor. They wanted to go through your mail and find out if you were sending like anything indecent. It was because of like McCarthyism. And so I wonder if like now is kind of a little bit of just a mode of control, because if you control the postal service, then you're controlling the way people do business, what they're dependent on, their livelihoods. It's a lot of nuances too on it. So
yes, you're right. Okay, Lynn and Paul, and then we're almost at the top of the hour. We'll jump to Ray and John Brakey.
My comment is very short. If you recall, Biden recently appeared with one of his big pronouncements about himself to say, I'm a capitalist. And, you know, that's where it's at. I mean, that is why the post office and other organizations and agencies are falling apart, because Biden and et cetera want to make as much money out of them as possible, want to exploit them, and then move on.
Right. And I will reiterate that the Postal Service has been at the heart of American society for, almost 300 years, since the mid 1700s, and 250 anyway. And it's outrageous. And it really harms the entire society, really harms the whole country when you have a postal service that's not functional. Paul Newman and then Ron Leonard, and we're going to.
Yes, I just wanted to say I read this book called Sun Tzu, Art of War. And I've noticed for years, for decades, the Republicans have been using the strategy of lighting fires all over the place. And meanwhile, the Democrats are overwhelmed with things they have to focus and prioritize. And this is more of a question. Do you believe that it's quite possible that that's what's really going on? Why the Democrats and why Biden hasn't addressed the joy? Because it's low on his priority list.
It should be
I mean,
at the
if you look
top
at
of the
election fraud
priority.
and all the other stuff.
Right, but to have a functioning postal service has been at the core of American society for more than 2 centuries. And to have Biden come in, friend of the working class, and ignore the catastrophe at the postal service, it's suicidal. For the Democratic Party, it's suicidal because the postal unions have been among the strongest force of progressive politics in this country forever. Ron Leonard and David, I think actually we're going to have to we're going to jump to the electoral politics. Go ahead, Ron.
So hopefully I can join the two pieces together. The first ever long distance flight of a internal combustion powered airplane was from Albany, New York to Long Island, New York. And what happened? They delivered a letter from the governor. So there is a precedent for the use of postal instant delivery and instant satisfaction. And Harvey, I think you might have noticed I sent you a little thing that you're seeing in the news. These outside agitators are somehow causing students to act up on canvases, and that's what's causing the unrest. It's outside agitators, and one of the ones they noticed was an organization started by a friend of yours and mine called Connie Hogarth. Connie Hogarth famously started Westpac in Westchester in the 1970s. And I know her personally, and she was a wonderful, wonderful human being. And it's not an outside agitation. It's a inside realization that the youth have that unless they stand up for human rights, we're all fools and we are going to be lost.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ron. David Guran, and then I think we're going to go, will be time, we'll go to John Brakey, Ray McClendon, and go ahead. Are you in a car, David? You're obviously in a car.
I stopped.
You stopped.
Just real quick.
Okay.
Yep. Just real quick is one, we have corporate Democrats. They support really a lot of the same things as the Republicans. So, that's why Biden hasn't changed it. It's not that they're too busy. They waste a lot of time doing crap when they should be doing their job. And then in terms of the protests, Biden, he was asked if this is going to change his mind on anything. He said no. So it just shows that Biden just will not listen to the people, and that's what's been happening,
it's terrible.
The last decades.
I have a personal note on that. We made a film in the 70s about fighting the nuclear plant at Seabrook, New Hampshire. And we had a press conference where the president of Public Service, misnamed Public Service Corporation New Hampshire, which was building the Seabrook plant, said that he would never listen to anything. I would hope that those protests have no impact. Well, the guy's name was William Tallman, and within years, he went bankrupt because they didn't listen to the public. They tried to build 2 reactors at Seabrook, and they got the first one done, but the second one put him into bankruptcy. If he had listened to us, they'd be running offshore windmills now. So let's hope that Biden gets over this nonsense. Ruth Strauss, did you want to join in with us? Thank you, David. And
Sure.
Thank you for not moving in your car.
No problem.
Last thing we ever want is somebody talking in a car that's moving. I won't go into it. Anyway, Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, well, just a couple of things. I mean, I hope I'm not stepping on anyone's toes or coming in the middle. But number one, in terms of outside agitators, there have always been outside agitators. I remember, protesting in Cambridge about the Vietnam War, and the people who broke the, windows of storefronts were like, quote unquote, townies from Somerville. And I think that's the same thing that happens with the Black Lives Matters. The people who broke into stores were probably not the Black Lives Matters people. And regarding this most recent thing at UCLA, I don't know whether people have already talked about this or not, but the outside agitators were, Zionists who weren't even on camp, or, weren't part of campus life. So it's not always, outside agitators are not always the good guys, and oftentimes aren't. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is about Biden. I disagree. I mean, yes, he's on the wrong side of history on a lot of things, but I think he does listen. And what I mean by that is, finally today, he said he's not, I mean, it's late, it's terribly late, but that he's not gonna, send any more, death machines to Israel. Now, they still need to get rid of the funding and everything else, but, I still think it's important for people to raise their voices and, not give up. And the very last thing I wanted to say is that I saw a fantastic documentary this past weekend, and I'm at the Writers Guild, and now it's at the Lemley, and it's called I Am Gitmo, and it's excellent. And please support it because it's Cinema Libre. They're an independent film organization, and hopefully people will go see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. We really appreciate that. We're now at the top of the hour. We got 53 people with us, and we're going to segue as advertised. We didn't get much to campus stuff, but we did get some. Segue as advertised to John Breaker and Ray McClendon. John, I'd like I don't see Ken Bennett on yet, and we got the whole hour blocked off for this. I did, since we have Ray McClendon with us, would love to get an update from Ray. Ray, you game here? Can you jump in with us, Ray McClendon? Let me get you unmuted.
Yes.
Okay, so Ray is currently reviewing the guide that we're hopefully going to put out. He's going to join with us on Thursday on that. But Ray, always something going on in Georgia. I am staggered to see that the Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has signed a petition to free Julian Assange. Maybe it's time to jump in and get her to support clean voting. But anyway, what's the latest from Georgia before we go to Arizona?
Well, sure. Well, we're in the middle of early voting here. We've got some critical races that are up. Of course, congressional districts, as well as the critical race for DA in Fulton County, where Fonnie Willis is up in the primary. She looks very strong. We had a host of ministers and faith leaders come out for her yesterday. She's leading very well in the polls, so I think she will come through fine. The biggest issue that we have right now is that the early voting is down from 2022 for the primary. So we're going to be getting people out in the streets this weekend. We're boosting our text messaging with our good friends at the Center for Common Ground, and so we have another week and a half of early voting to go, and so we're going to really ramp up our touch points with those key primary voters that we've touched in the past to get them out to the polls. This is a good test case for us. We see that some of the intensity is down right now. I think people have fatigue, but we've got to ramp up the critical nature of this election, and so we're going to be turning up the heat, so to speak, over the next 2 weeks.
And when is the vote?
May 21st.
And this is a
we
primary.
have early voting continuing until May 17th.
And this is a primary?
This is the primary and also the nonpartisan judicial races.
And what is happening with the prosecution of Trump's election
Well,
manipulation?
it's really been quiet for the last several weeks from the courtroom perspective. But I would suspect that it's going to ramp back up here in the next couple of weeks.
Is there any chance there'll be a trial in Georgia before the election in the fall?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it.
Okay.
They've done enough to muck up the works, so to speak, that with all of the rulings that have got to occur, I doubt that there will be any kind of proceedings where you will see the actual defendants in court prior to the election, which is the same thing we'll see in Florida as well, I believe.
Okay. Any questions about Georgia? Great to hear from you. I do want to offer my condolences. The state of Georgia is about to become the most expensive state in the country for electricity. And this is because the Vogtle plant, the last large nuclear reactor in the United States, light water, the last large light water reactor in the United States did open in the last couple of months. And your electric rates will probably go higher than California, and will certainly go higher than Hawaii. Hawaii has actually had the highest electric rates in the country, but it's now, they're going solar in Hawaii, and that's going to change. But you got these two big nuclear plants coming in at $35 billion. And Ray, it's time to go solar, man.
Well, not only that, it's time for us to change the way the Public Service Commission gets elected. As you know, we've been fighting, and actually were a part of a lawsuit. My good friend and co-founder of Communities United, Richard Rose, was one of the named plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the Public Service Commission because they dilute the black vote by having all of their commissioners being elected statewide at large. And so that that dilutes the ability to put progressive, proactive people on the Public Service Commission, which then in turn rubber stamps these types of boondoggles like Plant Vogtle, and creates a situation where once it's in construction, then it's automatically going to flow through the cost of those plants to the ratepayers. So we need to change the way the Public Service Commission is structured.
Well, I don't remember the last time Georgia won the national championship, but you now have the national championship for the most expensive power plant in the history of the United States. $35 billion for two reactors, and it is going to devastate the economy of Georgia. So I hope that you guys can figure out how to deal with this. But you know, California just passed, this legislature in California just passed a flat tax on all users of electricity in the state. It's just outrageous. And you should watch California, because everything happened here is going to happen to you in California, in Georgia. But the Vogtle plant is absolutely a catastrophe, as I don't have to tell you. And I hope the next time that we see you, you still have your lights on.
Thanks.
You'll have to take out a bank loan to pay your electric bill.
Hey.
All right, man. Always good to talk to you. And stick with us if you will. There's going to be a lot to learn here from what's going on in Arizona. I mean, two of the hot spots, of course, in this country on election rights, along with Wisconsin, is Arizona and Georgia. It's because of the people who've been on this call, who've been raising Cain here. So we have John Brakey, the great hero of voting, of auditing, and of scanning. I got to say, John, that you almost single-handedly have raised the issue of digital scanning of paper ballots, which is absolutely critical to the future of democracy. And we've got Ken Bennett just voted, I believe, the best Republican senator in the Arizona legislature. The two of you are with us. So, John, if you'll give us the heads up, This is going to be a deep dive into election protection and the detail for the 54 people with us. We really need to know this stuff. So go ahead, John and Ken, please.
Well, thank you. And yeah, Ken is here with us, and he's really got some great news from his work in the Senate, in the House, and it's been a rough going. You know, Ken has stood his ground and stood up and made sure the right things are done. It cost us with the Freedom Caucus that they wouldn't back a bill because Ken wouldn't take on their craziness and push legislation and stuff that he doesn't believe in, because Ken's a very principled Republican, and that's where we became close friends from our work together inside the Maricopa audit, being in the same foxhole. But anyway, Ken, thank you. And I guess the big thing everybody's talking about is the article by Jen Fiffield and the negotiations that you're having with the Senate and with Fontes. Could you please explain to everybody the good news and how things will look?
Well, thank you, John. Good to be with you. And thank you, Harvey, for having me on. As many of the listeners may know, last year we got a bill through the legislature, bipartisan, but it was unfortunately vetoed by the governor that would have set up a 4-point election verification project at the Secretary of State's office, where the counties would submit their documents. It would start with who was eligible to vote in the election. That's already a public document, who's registered to vote. Then who voted. Obviously, there shouldn't be anybody on the who voted list that wasn't on the eligible to vote list. The third thing would have been the ballot images. The number of people who voted should match the number of ballots exactly. And then the cast vote record is the spreadsheet where the votes on those ballots can be verified, either ballot by ballot or all of them, or precinct by precinct, or whatever somebody might want to look at and verify. Unfortunately, there were concerns about whether a posting of this data through a secure portal at the Secretary of State's website, like the bill contemplated last year, that might still inadvertently disclose how one person voted, especially in a primary election where you're voting on partisan ballots. And in some of Arizona's small precincts, if there was only one Green Party registrant or Libertarian, all you'd have to do is find the Libertarian ballot in that precinct, and now you know how the one Libertarian voted. But so we had the bill. I changed the bill to address the governor's veto concerns. It moved back through the Senate this year, had even more bipartisan support than last year. But when it got over to the House, the far right caucus in the House of Representatives was mad at me about not just towing the party line and voting on a couple of bills that had some flaws in it. And I had the audacity to ask them to fix the bills before we voted on them, and they refused. And so I voted against them, and they were upset at me. So they killed the bill. And so now my backup plan, and this has kind of been bouncing around in my head for almost a year. The backup plan is we have about $6 million parked in the state budget. I think it's up at the state treasurer's office. And it was parked up there a few years ago for any one of a number of considerations related to election integrity that might come up. And so I have discussed with my Republican caucus and have their, looks like, unanimous support. And I think I will have, again, lots of support from the Democrats as well, to basically do a project, an election verification project. We probably won't call it an audit this time, but it's essentially a reconciliation of those four things. Who was eligible to vote? Who voted? The ballot images, the ballot images are anonymous. They don't tie into any specific person. And then the cast vote record where the votes from those ballots are tabulated. And we will, I've already spoken with Secretary of State Adrian Fontes again, even though he's a Democrat and I'm Republican. We seem to have a very good working relationship, and he's supportive. He's he's a little more hesitant than I am as to whether we can have this ready for this fall, but I believe it's imperative that we do have this fall, because somebody's going to win one of these key races, the presidential or the U.S. Senate race or whatever. Somebody's going to win in Arizona and somebody's going to lose. And I'm afraid that we're going to have the same thing that's happened in 2022 and 2020, that the loser doesn't accept that they've lost. They just simply claim there must have been voter fraud, and so I couldn't have possibly lost. We have to be able to. Now, this will probably be a project where instead of posting all the ballot images publicly, we'll have it in a little more controlled format, and we will be able to invite any candidate, any party representatives, anybody, even the media, if they wanted to come in, anybody who has a legitimate reason, individual citizens, if they want to come in and look at the data and verify in their own mind or in their little group that's saying whatever they're saying's mind, that the election was done correctly. That's the goal, is to make Arizona's elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verifiable. And we're going to do this through a election verification project with those 4 pieces of data.
Wow, fantastic. Now that's got to be a model for the whole country. That's
well,
really
I'm kind of hoping so, John. Do you think I mean, I was delighted last year when we had the bill that we had Democrat election experts from Florida and New York and North Carolina and Tennessee and California and all over the country, including John and his group, saying that the approach that we had in the bill last year, that they supported that. But now that the word is starting to get out, I've got Republicans calling me. John, you'll recognize the name Marissa Hamilton.
Yes.
Probably an election denier as to 2020 and 2022, but she was just giddy with support about how this idea is the best idea that I think is out there as to how we can verify that an election was done correctly. And that is reconcile those 4 pieces of data.
And you won't believe how fast we can reconcile them. Okay. You know, we have developed a computer program, which is an off-the-shelf Excel, Microsoft Excel, and working with Ellen Tyson and others, mainly Ellen, we have designed a program that we can go ahead and take Dane County, Wisconsin, 303,000 voters. We can hyperlink everything, the ballot images into the cast vote record and the single file, and do it in 53 seconds. Okay. And then we can sort it into precincts and
so
create
once that's
separate
done,
cast
Harvey,
vote records.
Sorry to jump in on you, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Once that's done, you can take that file that has those hyperlinks between the ballot images, anonymous ballot images, and the row in the cast vote record spreadsheet that reflects the votes from each ballot. You can toggle back and forth and see that on row 106,992, there's votes for Smith in this race and Jones in that race and Garcia in that race. And you can toggle immediately to the image of that ballot, 106,692 or whatever I said. And you can see that the system correctly recorded the votes in each race. And then you can go to the bottom of the columns for each candidate and see that the totals reported by each county match what was in their canvass report.
And it will not tell you who cast that vote.
No, it will not tell you who cast that vote. No, absolutely not. But it'll link the image of the anonymous ballot. Now, probably one of the things that we'll have to do in this project, that was a concern of people who opposed the bill last year, is that we'll probably have to come up with a program and some volunteers with good training to check every ballot image and make sure that Grandma Smith didn't write her name and social security number on her ballot or something like that. And if she did, we'll redact that, but we'll show the ballot, we'll show the votes from every ballot once we have made sure that no ballot inadvertently identifies who the voter was.
Phenomenal. So I know that we have a very astute crew here. We have 55 people on. I just want to reiterate, the modern election protection movement was pretty much born in Florida after 2000, when Greg Palast and Bev Harris showed that the election was stolen. Hold on one sec. Sorry, everybody. I have somebody fixing my door in the background. Anyway, perfect timing. And then in Ohio 2004, when we saw what happened there, we took the movement to another level. And our principal demand, because we were the theft in Ohio 2000 was done with touchscreen voting machines. The principal demand that came out of Ohio 2004 was for hand-counted paper ballots. We did not understand how complicated that is. And it was John Brakey and you guys in Arizona who introduced the dimension of digital scanning, which we did not think of in 2004. And you brought it to fruition. And I will tell you, everybody listening, I will tell you without hesitation that the outcome of the 2020 election would have been different if it had not been for digital scanning of hand-counted paper ballots. That is what protected democracy in 2020, was the digitization, the scanning of the hand-counted paper ballots, which became necessary because of COVID. As you'll recall, more than 80% of the ballots in the United States in 2020 were cast on paper ballots and counted on paper ballots, mostly because we had to do mail-in. People couldn't go in and cast their votes in 2020. But now, this is the big test. 2024 is the big test. And what you're doing in Arizona to update and confirm the validity of the paper ballots with digital scanning and all the other stuff you're doing, that has to be the definition of how the 24 election is going to be cast. Am I overstating the case here?
No, I don't think so, Harvey. In fact, there's probably a fifth aspect that we might add to the project, and that is to do some random spot checking of the ballot images to the actual paper ballots.
Right.
Because the counties know which which batches of ballots are in which boxes, and I think it would just be awesome if after we verify the ballot images to the votes registered in the cast vote record spreadsheet and verify that those match exactly and the totals for each candidate in each of their columns matches what the county reported, I'm going to actually be pushing for maybe check 100 or 200 or 500 ballots in each county to show people that nobody's messing with the scanning machines. And when those ballots are run through, the image that the machine is taking of the paper ballot exactly matches the paper ballot. Because there is you could allege that if somebody had the ability or to manipulate the machines, they would manipulate the machines so that when they found a ballot of their liking, they would take that image and then substitute it for every 11th or 17th or whatever ballot that's being scanned through the machine. But just some random checks to verify the ballot images to the actual paper ballots would be kind of frosting on the cake as a fifth action on top of the four that I've already mentioned.
Well, this has to be written up. You've got to do a paper on this. Ray McClendon, in Georgia is listening to this, and it has to go into the guidebook we put out on the 24 election, which we hope to do within the month. And because this is the critical, I will tell you that if the 2020 election had not been done on hand-counted, hand-marked, hand-counted, digitally scanned paper ballots, we would not be able to refute the idea that the election was stolen. There would be no way, because if 2020 had been conducted on machines, you know, it would be anybody's guess. It is hand-marked, hand-counted, digitally scanned paper ballots that saved democracy in 2020.
And in Arizona, we are 99.5% paper ballots. Yes, we have some ballot marking devices for voters with disabilities but it ends up creating a paper ballot. It ends up creating a paper trail. It's not a full ballot size, but Arizona is paper ballots. And I'm excited to see how we can verify registered voters to voters who voted, not how they voted, but did they vote? That's already public information. The number of voters matches the number of ballot images, and the votes on those ballot images are correctly tabulated in the cast vote record, and everything adds up and balances.
Well, that has got to be turned into a manual. And I know, let me just say one more thing here, that we have a lot of Republicans now who are advocating hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots, but the digital scanning is a different piece of the puzzle here. And you have to be able to guarantee that the digital scanning is, you know, is not messed with. So there's got to be backup on that. I will say we had on this call a while ago a Democrat from Nevada who was vehemently opposing hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots because they didn't think that it could be verified. And so what you're offering here is really a hybrid of, you know, a primitive technology of marking a ballot with, you know, what needs to come from the computer age. John Brakey, go ahead.
It solves, Harvey, it also solves a very difficult problem for election officials. What do you want? Speed or accuracy? You can't have both. Our system, the one that Ken Bennett, me, and others put together and built, does both. Imagine Maricopa, 1,500 boxes of ballots, 7 batches in a box, 758 precincts or whatever. You'd have to open up 1,450 boxes to make one precinct, and you would wind up destroying all of the batches, and you can't do that. With this system, it's automatic. We want to teach precinct committeemen and women how 2 of them get together and they could do their precinct and check everything, and believe it or not, do it in less than 2 hours. That's how quick it would be. It's very important that we go ahead and get back to precinct levels, because precincts have histories rather than what we have now: vote by mail, drop boxes, all different ways and different batches. There's no way to confirm. And secondly, the cast vote record database is a really important tool, but without the ballot images, it's no good, because it is a spreadsheet. What do you want it to be? You have to have elections that have strong evidence that Ken Bennett is talking about. And that's what we're working for. Elections that we can believe in, and no more Wizard of Oz.
Well, and you know, in the 1896 election, the Republicans under Mark Hanna really stole that election, and they claimed that all these ballots for William Jennings Bryan had been eaten by farm animals. I swear, it's in the newspapers at the time that, you know, the donkeys came in and ate the ballots. So I hope you guys have a way.
We had allegations in Arizona in the 2020 presidential race that one of the county supervisors who tried to stand up for the integrity of the election, but his family owns a chicken ranch and is the largest egg producer in the state of Arizona, that somehow hundreds of thousands of those ballots ended up inside of his chickens. So,
well, in Ohio, 2004, they said that And I would say there was a picture of me actually in the New York Times sorting through ballots in a rural county. And they said that in one county, they said that the paper ballots were mistakenly put in the recycling bin. And then in another county, they said they couldn't count the ballots because a coffee urn had tipped over and ruined all the ballots. So you got to take care of the ballots along with the digital images. We got Dave Saltman here. Dave, go ahead, please.
Speaking as a professional magician who specializes in throwing bombs into plans like yours, what would you do if you found a large discrepancy between any two of those? Would you have to disqualify all the votes?
No, I don't think you would ever disqualify all the votes and, you know, somehow try to redo.
What's your protocol? What's your protocol? Suppose you find 500 votes that are not corresponding in two of your four categories.
David, we'll write up the protocols before we do it.
Well, what is your protocol now? If you don't have one, I promise you, and I've offered before on this broadcast to demonstrate this, me and my friend Mark Minton will steal every goddamn vote in your entire repertoire.
Steal every vote. Well,
he's a top class professional magician with a top security rating.
Well, I think the protocol will be bipartisan observers looking at every ballot image to the cast vote record to verify that if the cast vote record says there's a vote for Smith and Jones and Garcia on that ballot, that they can look at that ballot and see a vote for Smith and Jones and Garcia.
And what if they can't find that ballot because Mark Minton and I hijacked it?
Well, you'd have to break in. You'd have to do a lot of things. I mean, we can play ifs and ifs.
Well, I'm telling you, if somebody
realities here, okay? There's a ballot and there's a ballot image and there's a redundant system. You would have to be able to screw with both of them to make a good steal.
Each ballot image is hash. Each ballot image gets a hash value. We're going to rely on people smarter than me to make sure that nothing has been changed in the ballot image.
May I suggest that the reason that all these things worked so well in the past, because basically there wasn't that much tampering. But if there's deliberate tampering, you guys are in trouble, with all due respect.
That's why we have a redundant system. That is why that we want the ballot and the ballot image. And that's why we've really tightened up the security in Arizona. Ken, my work in the last 20 years, I must have sued Maricopa 8 times, and we're good friends now because we got to take a look.
Do you physically transmit the paper ballots from one location to another? Of course.
Not really. No.
You count them on location?
It depends. You know, you got different ways. You got vote by mail. You got precincts are pretty much gone. It's voting centers. It comes in. We do know that Maricopa probably has one of the best tracking systems that I've ever seen. It's as good or better than Amazon. Everywhere it winds up, you get a note saying it's here or I just got there, and it lets you know. I mean, yeah.
David, you were asking about. David, you were asking about how did the ballot images get transferred from the 15 counties in Arizona?
No, I'm asking how the paper ballots get counted. I don't think you count them at every polling station. They go to a central location, which means they need to be transported by truck, which means that we need to hijack the truck somehow or the box. Yeah. Believe me, we do this for a living. We can make elephants disappear.
Well, 14 of the 15 counties in Arizona use only a central count. The largest county, Maricopa, which is about 60% of the vote in the state, they use voting centers, and they actually do tabulation at the 238 voting centers and then transmit the data to the central count, because the mailed in ballots are being
data how? Each one of those is
they deliver the cards. Everything
they deliver the thumb drive. They deliver the thumb drive with a sheriff's deputy and 2 people from different parties.
We knocked out that deputy, and that's Mark Minton. posing as a sheriff's deputy.
Oh, okay.
Listen,
That's how
David
it
is
works.
taken
Believe me.
very seriously, you guys. This
I'm
guy
not
knows
kidding.
stuff.
If somebody really wants to disrupt the election, that plan although I love the brain power that's gone into it, it's just not going to work. Or let's put it
Well,
this way,
we
can't be
strongly
defeated.
disagree with you, and it's okay to disagree. Okay. We take this job very seriously. I've been doing this 20 years.
I
Okay.
agree with
Ken's
you.
been doing elections, running since
I was-
2015 with Secretary of State.
I was the Secretary of State for the state of Arizona from 2009 to 2015.
Well, let me ask your impression then. You know for a fact, haven't most of those elections been basically honest and correct?
Yes.
Precisely the point.
I oversaw 12 statewide elections during the 6 years that I was Secretary of State. The first statewide recount in the history of the state of Arizona was triggered in one of those elections because we had a statewide ballot measure that failed by 126 votes. First time at that time in the history of the state that the state statute was triggered that says you had to have a automatic recount if a statewide election was within 200 votes, winning, losing. So I not only did the 12 elections, but I had to oversee a recount, statewide recount. We recounted almost 2 million ballots, and the result changed by 12.
Precisely. That's not an election that has been hijacked. That's an honest election. They're all like that. Most of them, as far as I know. The actual incidence of election fraud is very small.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
that.
think
But
the
there is
answer
an
is
instant
I
that
think
we
the
see
answer,
as a
David,
concern
I
that
think the answer,
Maricopa
David,
County taught us.
wait, John. The answer obviously is that prior to the voting this fall, there all professional magicians should be arrested.
That's the first step on the path to true honesty in this world. Good for
Go
you.
ahead, John. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well,
you.
I was
Go
just saying is that, the system that me and Ken have worked hard building with others is that we believe if an election was separated by one vote, how certain we could be. And then the experience that me and Ken had through the Maricopa audit that happened, me working inside Maricopa for 2 weeks, me looking very strong at electronic adjudication, and then finding out that 11% of all the ballots that come into Maricopa need to be adjudicated. 70% of those adjudications are write-ins, but the rest of it is voter error. And we live in a state with voter intent. We live in a state that if you make a mistake on your ballot in Maricopa and you call and say, send me a ballot, they're going to say, no, no, no. What we want you to do is cross out your mistake and write no, fill in the next bubble and write yes, and automatically that ballot, as it goes through the system in a batch, it will jump up and it will say, hey, I need a human being. Look at me. Is this a real overvote or is there a real vote here? And those 200 ballots in the batch will be frozen until the team of 20 tables with 2 people each, with cameras above, with 2 roaming judges to make a decision. And it's very fast. And that was what led Maricopa wanting to say, hey, we want ballot images released because we want to show them that we have a good election and we want to release them by precinct because that's a small enough number, because we want to teach people how to audit by learning how to climb a hill rather than trying to take on a mountain that has 2.5 million ballot images in there. And you would not have enough space in your computer to store them all. Okay. I mean, the point is that this system, we want to push all across the country. We want to go after the Attorney General's Association, Republican and Democrats, to get them to realize that the problems in elections are very complicated. But my God, the solutions are simple. It's called transparency with redundancy, because without it, our democracy is dying in darkness.
Well, let me just say here, all I'm focused on is Arizona. I'm not trying to push something out yet to the whole country. We're going to try to do what we can do in Arizona. If we can do it better with suggestions from you, David, or anybody, then, we'll write up all those protocols. If it turns into a manual, Harvey, that's fine. all I'm focused on is doing the best job we can at proving to Arizonans that the election was correct. And the more we do that, the more I think we can say that the elections in the past were probably correct too, and that they don't have nearly the amount of alleged errors or manipulation as some people have tried to say for the last 2 to 4 years. But I just want to be able to tell the people of Arizona, if you want to cut, we might have we had a statewide race in 2022 for the Attorney General. That was 540 votes between the winner and the loser. And that triggered a recount because the law has been changed from 200 to 1/10 of 1%, but that was still within 1/10 of 1%. And we had to recount a statewide race just a couple years ago. And as John said, we might have a race decided by 8 votes, not 560. And we're going to have to prove to somebody that they won and to the other person that they lost.
And of course,
phenomenal. I think in a month, we should convene a national, if your guys are game, a national Zoom call to invite everybody involved and to hear what you guys say. I know you're focused on Arizona, but look, Arizona could very easily decide the presidency in the fall. And this is a very, very big deal. And I think we're proud that this kind of discussion has really originated with these Zooms. So, and John Brakey, we're just so proud of you and Ken here to raise this. No one else is talking about it. It is really huge. Steve Caruso, please, then Lynn Feinerman and Donald Smith.
So here's another layer of protection, David. Sorry. The precincts have poll tapes. Get the pictures of the poll tapes after a bipartisan group at the precinct level totals the votes out, checks the voter rolls, the signing books, and everything that's done at the local level, and then have that added in to the totals. That's,
that would
that's the way it should be done, and that's how you maintain the integrity of the chain of custody, because everything should be added from the precinct level on up and be accounted for, right?
From the magician's point of view, that just gives us another place to attack. But
okay,
knock yourselves out. I will do this, and we did this before. Anytime you want to have a mock election, and you want Mark Mitten and myself, who we've already discussed how we're going to do this, so we're ready for you. You want us to hijack it, we'll do it. We'll give you a demonstration. Violence is not forsworn, by the way. If we have to knock out one of your truck drivers, that's on you, not us. I'm warning you in advance. But if somebody's going to steal an election, that's what they're going to do. I would say that we've been very lucky in this country that most of the elections, what you're finding are mistakes, and as well you should. And there's plenty of mistakes. The hanging chads will forever be with us, and that's fine. But if somebody really wanted to do it would not be that difficult, in my opinion.
I just saw a note come up from someone to have a trial run. We might use the July 30th primary as our trial run, and then work out any bugs or kinks and have it ready for the November 5th general. Donald?
That's a great idea. Let me call on Lynn Feinerman. Lynn, go ahead.
Yes, what with all the discussions about how elections can be taken out through the ballot, I am reminded that the rump recently indicated publicly that there were 100,000 poll watchers, quote unquote, that were recruited from his campaign. I'm wondering if Arizona is concerned about possible poll violence and poll threats. And just as an aside, I congratulate you on the repeal of your 1864 law.
Thank you, Lynn. There is a concern evidenced by some communications between the Secretary of State's office and the counties, and some public posting on the Secretary of State's website about trying to prevent, if possible, or identify and respond as quickly as possible to any incidents of violence at the polls. And there was a governor's task force on election integrity, which did include poll safety and things like that as one of the subtopics that has occurred within the last year. So I think we're working on that in Arizona. Don't want to get into too many details about how we're going to try to prevent it, because we'll just give somebody our map about how to get around it. So, but we are concerned about that and appreciate your expression of that concern.
Very good, Lynn. Very good point there. Donald Smith, go ahead, Donald.
Yeah, this is a question for David mostly. So you said, well, no matter what people do, a determined, skilled magician or a foreign government can hack it. I don't doubt that. I mean, if they're just like in internet security, if a foreign government like Russia or China wants to hack into something, they can do it. No matter how, So what's your point, David? It's possible if somebody's really determined to change the election result. So should we just give up? So it sounds like you're just saying, yeah, I can beat you. Okay, well, that just shows it's very hard. We have to try the best we can. And then there's no perfection. So what's your point?
Fair enough. That's a good point. Yes, I think that it can be beaten. I think that the hacking that has been done already was done not in the vote count itself, but before. That's at least my understanding, based on the testimony from that guy who used to run Psychology Today. I can't think of his name now, who was on this program before. I'm just saying that no program is foolproof, and that's part of the problem with democracy, I suppose.
Well, one of the first things we will do in this project is simply take the ballot images that were tabulated on one of 3 election management systems in Arizona. Arizona has 15 counties.
Right.
The largest county, Maricopa, uses Dominion systems. A lot of speculation around Dominion and accusations, but Maricopa uses Dominion. The county that I reside in, Yavapai County, uses Unison. And the other 13 counties use ES&S, Election Systems and Software. One of the first things we'll probably do is very similar to what Maryland does, which is Maryland at the state level lets the counties choose which EMS, election management system, they choose to use in each county, but then they take the ballot images from each county and run them through an entirely independent one. They use Clear Ballot. That's probably what we will do in conjunction with the tool that John has helped to develop. And one of the things we're going to do is make that tool available to the counties during the tabulation time so that they can identify mistakes and fix them before they canvass or certify the election. In Arizona, it's called canvassing. Before they officially certify, usually about 10 to 12 days out at each county, and then it goes to the state for statewide tabulation. But we will do some things that are not unknown in other states like Maryland. Maryland lets the counties do their tabulation, and then they take the ballot images, run them through an entirely independent system, and see if they get the same result as what each county did on whatever system they processed the ballots to begin with. So John uses the word redundancy. Sometimes the best thing to do is just count it this way. I mean, I'm an accountant. You crossfoot, you add the columns up vertically, and then you make sure they total horizontally, and vice versa. And so it's just a matter of having as much data points and having, which the tool that John has developed, have the ability to take hundreds of thousands of ballot images in a county and most of our counties now use voting centers where you've got people from all different precincts that are casting ballots. They all kind of get intermingled. And so if you wanted to find the 800 ballots from the Maple precinct, you'd have to open almost every box the county stored those ballots in. But if you can go initially to the ballot images and say, show me all the ballot images from Maple precinct, then you can show the 6 Republican precinct committeemen and the 7 Democrat precinct committeemen from Maple precinct that here's the 800 ballots. Oh yeah, that's about what happens each, in a presidential election. We have about 800 out of our 1,000 or whatever the numbers are. That was the number, by the way, in Arizona 4 years ago. We had 80% turnout. 80% of Arizonans voted in the 2020 election for president. So we've got a pattern of how things work at the precinct level. Being able to reverse engineer, not that's maybe a bad term, but just being able to sort back to the precinct level will allow us to show people data that they're used to feeling comfortable about when they worked in a precinct 10, 15 years ago before we had voting centers and mail-in balloting, and 800 people showed up in the Maple precinct and voted.
Phenomenal discussion. Really fantastic here. MYLA RESON, please, MYLA.
Oh, thank you. And John, thanks so much for bringing Ken Bennett to meet with us. The saying goes that a broken clock is right twice a day. In that respect, I recently saw Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, calling for hand-counted paper ballots. He's been saying that he really wants, that's the only way that people can actually have confidence that in the results of an election. And and he's also calling for the elimination of electronic voting. And I'm wondering if in the places in Arizona where ES&S and various other voting machines are adopted, whether you're also calling for a paper trail so that you have a combination of paper and electronic so that people, again, can have confidence.
Well, yes, that's great point, MYLA. And the short answer is yes and yes. We will, as I said earlier, 99.5% of all ballots in Arizona are paper, and the ones that are cast electronically generate a paper printout that shows what the votes were. And so we do have a paper trail. Chain of custody records will be a vitally important aspect to making sure that, as was mentioned by David, Maricopa County has 238 voting centers. And when those ballots are tabulated at each center, and then the ballots physically are driven down under sheriff deputy supervision and 2-party observers accompanying that, and then a thumb drive with the results of what was tabulated at that voting center. All of that comes into the central count where gobs of people are watching from all the different parties to make sure that everything adds up. And so, yeah, chain of custody, paper ballots, and to the Mike Lindells of the world, the largest hand count of an election is the one that John and I participated in 4 years ago. We hand counted, or at least the cyber ninjas from Florida hand counted 2.1 million ballots. Actually, it wasn't it was 2,089,563 ballots.
Amazing. Can I just add that when I was growing up, we used to have the polls. I lived in Southern California as a child, and we had our garage was converted into a polling place on election days, and observers from all the parties and independents would watch the counting of the paper ballots, and they would be certified by all of the observers and move on from there. So it seemed like a good way to do it at the time. Mm-hmm. And I've got to think that we don't only need speed, the priority needs to be accuracy. And And
Well, if I had to pick one of those, yeah, if I had to pick one of those two, it's accuracy.
right.
But to John's point, with the tools that we're working on, I think we can have accuracy and speed to verify the election before it's certified, because that's what a lot of kind of the far right crowd in Arizona is screaming about, is that the election gets certified and then we don't have any data to really go to a judge and present anything that would be acceptable evidence to say something might have gone wrong. So we've got to have accuracy with enough speed to make sure that people have confidence that we got both.
And if you would allow me just one off topic, please look into shutting down the Palo Verde nuclear power plant. It's in Arizona. You know, we get energy or electricity from Palo Verde here in Los Angeles, and
what do you want us to replace it with?
Solar.
Solar, wind. You can
solar
do
and wind, but you know, the operator of Palo Verde spent something like $10 million trying to defeat the initiative back in 2018 that would have required a certain amount of solar generated in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, we can show you how to put solar on every rooftop, parking lot, and reservoir in Arizona, and get every drop of electricity you could ever use. It's amazing how Georgia and Arizona, these two electoral hotspots, are also hotspots in the nuclear issue. This has been a phenomenal hour. So I want to commit to 1 month from now, we will call a national Zoom and revisit everything you guys have done, and fold it in with Georgia, Wisconsin, and Ohio, and the other places where Michigan, where this is really, really a big deal. But I cannot understate or overstate the importance of what you're doing here. It's phenomenal. John? John, I think
in closing, I just want to add that, you know, the tentative plan right now is Steve Rosenfield is flying in Wednesday. Ken, me, and Steve are meeting Thursday. Maybe I know Ken has some commitments Friday afternoon, maybe in the morning. We're going to try to go ahead and put a paper together. That's why Steve's coming in, and we're going to make an incredible video laying it out, how this works so simply, how big this thing really could be, and the training, because it is phenomenal. And I also posted a video in the chat that you'll find that at 12 minutes in, you'll see the system working. It's unbelievable. It's just bigger than I thought it could be. And I've had this dream ever since 2006, because I knew that the digital was coming because it was already here. I was using it. Elections didn't want it. They did not want to have this additional record hanging over them. They liked the old system, that there was no evidence left behind. And now we have it.
We counted the ballots. We counted the ballots. We put them all in boxes. We sealed the boxes. So it's over. We can't look at anything. No, we can look at every ballot, sorted into precincts. We can retabulate it on a different EMS system than what any county or all of the counties did. We can count it a third way. We can let David hijack it for an hour and see if when we count it again, we get the same results. We can count it backwards and forwards and up and down. And
it's incredible.
Well, I can personally attest that David's apartment is too small to hide that many ballots. But nonetheless, I do want to point out that
semi trucks to take the original ballots.
Not only has this been a phenomenal hour, but it's also the hour in which the Grebe Zoom call has expressed strong solidarity with Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Mike Lindell. So if we want to add more political balance, by all means, let's do. Steve Caruso, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I would play the video, but it's not Creative Commons licensed. So Google, YouTube's still trying to keep track of their money.
Well, put the link in the chat. Put the link in the chat.
Yeah, I did. It's right there. So
okay.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Creative Commons is great. YouTube locks your whole video down and it would be worthless. Thanks.
Okay, thank you guys. Ken Bennett, great to have you with us. John Brakey. We're in 4 weeks from today. whatever that date is, 4 weeks from today, we will conduct a national seminar on what you
Good.
guys are doing there. We'll bring in Ray from Georgia and people from Wisconsin, places where we've really made a critical success. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you, Harvey.
No nukes, no nukes, as MYLA has brought in. Palo Verde is a nightmare. I don't know where you're going to get the water to continue to operate Palo Verde. You can have a referendum on that one. But thank you guys. And cover every rooftop in Phoenix, and you'll have all the power you can ever use.
Okay.
Really, all the power. Start with the stadium parking lots.
Okay.
And move from there. I'm serious.
I know you're serious. Oh yeah.
And you will have cheap, clean, safe, and get Ron Leonard to fly out to Phoenix, and he'll show you exactly how to do it.
Okay.
All right, you guys, we will see you again. Please write this up, give our best to Steve Rosenfeld, and we will move ahead. All right, fantastic. John, thank you so much, man. This is really, you made history on these calls. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And this is why we started them. This is not just a Chautauqua here. We mean social
I would
change.
just say that it's been a very exciting time for me for the last 6 months. I've lost 35 pounds, got myself back in shape, went back to my basics, and went back on this program. And it's really nice to have hope and be hopeful.
Well,
because
there's nothing better. There's nothing better for your physical and mental health than making social change. I mean, that's the way to live, because you wake up every morning knowing that you're going to make a difference in the world, and you don't have to have this existential crisis. Oh God, what am I doing here? So you, among others, and many, many people on this call, it's a self-selected group, have changed the world in a good way. And
you know what we've also decided to do? This is a tremendous program, and we debated, should we patent it? Should we do something with it? And the kind of group we are, what we decided? You can't keep it unless you give it away.
Exactly.
We didn't make this to make money. We did this to help our democracy, okay? That our grandchildren might have a future with everything's going on. I wish everybody would go see this movie. I snuck to see it because I was ashamed it was a piece of crap, that movie Civil War. And I'm glad I went to see it. And then I took my complete family. I recommend everybody sees it because, I work between the right and the left. I know what's going on out there. And I'm very concerned about what could happen this November. And, we did have a civil war before, and it was caused over an election. Okay, if you remember Abe Lincoln. Okay, yeah. The trigger is elections, and people are losing power. Our country is changing. There's a real social fight with this thing, 25, and what they're trying to do to our country. And maybe that, Trump is being backed by billionaires and a lot of evil people who want to turn this country into something else.
Well, John, we are nonpartisan, but 4 weeks from today, whatever it is,
yes,
you and Ken and come back. Bring Steve Rosenfeld. We'll have Ray and Andrea from Georgia and the South, and we will Norman Stockwell from Wisconsin, and we'll have a national seminar on election protection, which is where we all started 4 years ago. Okay, this has been phenomenal. It's after 4 o'clock California time. We can just have 20 minutes of free for all if you want. Anybody want to chime in? MYLA, go ahead, and we'll just say whatever you want and give us also topics that you might want in coming group Zooms. That would be great. MYLA, go ahead. Thank you again, John. No nukes.
Thank you, John. Really amazing. What an amazing interview with Ken. I want to remind everyone again that my dear friend and extraordinary creative genius, Matt Strackbine, also known as the Letter Hack, will be interviewing and drawing Harvey Wasserman at 9:30 Eastern. So starting in 2.5 hours, live stream on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and look for the Letter Hack channel, in order to subscribe and get notified, but I will put the link in the chat. And I'm hoping that all of you will show up and oh, look, there it is. That's my friend Max Strackbine, also known as the Letter Hack. Amazing comic genius, creative genius, just phenomenal. So please go there, go and sign up. Steve, can you put a link in the chat again, or I will? But anyway, please join us tonight in 2.5 hours. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Myla. And I'm looking forward to it. And I will be awake. I will have my teeth in, and we'll maybe I'm going to get a haircut. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for that. Does anyone else want? It's 4:04. We got 16 minutes. Anybody else want to chime in before we sign off here? I will say that, and I wanted to tell Ron Leonard this: the state of California, the incredibly corrupt legislature. You know, we have for the first time in history, we have an actual purchase price for a legislature. The purchase price, the purchase price of the Ohio legislature was $61 million. That's what they bribed the Speaker of the House, who's now in a federal penitentiary, Larry Householder. They paid him $61 million, and he delivered a $1 billion bailout for the 2 nuclear plants, the 2 mistakes by the lake. The California legislature has become so incredibly corrupt. They have now passed, and Paul Newman, who has solar panels on this house, well aware of this, they've now passed, they want to tax everybody who uses electricity based on their income. I mean, you have got to be kidding me. This is so insane. You know, I'm looking at a way to maybe I don't know if it's legal, if you can unhook from a utility company and not use any grid-based electricity at all. It's physically possible. Every house in LA.
No problem. No problem. They'll charge you a standby fee.
Right, exactly. You know, well, I used less electricity this month, but my bill went up. I mean, you know, that's the bottom line here. So, but I wonder what the actual number it is, the price tag to buy the California legislature. Because we know what it was in Ohio, 61 million. That sounds cheap for the California legislature, but maybe we're in the ballpark. Or maybe that's just for the governor alone. I don't know. Myla?
Well, I wanted to circle back, if it's okay, and just say that that I have been noticing, like a mushroom that came up. There's this, the table is being set, this narrative, to saying that the students who are protesting all over the country and all over the world right now will be responsible if Trump is elected. That somehow the protest, and not only that, I mean, it's just kind of disturbing because I think the kids are all right. And I'm, you know, I'm not in agreement with every single thing, but I'm so encouraged that they are standing up for what they believe in. And I watched on Tuesday night, UCLA, when for close to 4 hours, the police stood by and allowed a horrible, violent attack on the protesters, on the peaceful protesters at UCLA, my alma mater. And it was extraordinarily disturbing. And there is an investigation now, and it looks like heads will roll. But I just wanted to put that out there. Things are still going on. There were scores of students and legal observers that were arrested this morning at UCLA. And I just, you know, I was part of the free speech movement in California back in the 60s. And I think that it's really important that we allow the students to peacefully protest and speak their minds. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Myla. Paul Newman? Paul?
Yeah, I just want to say one of the candidates for mayor was at that protest and was arrested. The other thing is the news media seems to be totally, and we're talking about corporate news, you know, I don't know about MSNBC because I didn't see it there, but ABC, CBS, they're all saying that that the protesters were the cause of a riot. And Bernie had commented on that, saying that Bernie Sanders, that every time there's a peaceful protest, when the police come, all of a sudden it turns into a riot and it's sensationalized on the news. And that is a problem because they're exercising their rights. You know, it's a public, first of all, UCLA is funded by our tax money. And so if it's by our tax money, it should go along with the Constitution, First Amendment, you know, the right to protest. So this is a real systemic problem. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Paul. John Brakey and then Wendy.
I feel the same way that everybody else does, is that, you know, I've been an activist all my life. I left home at 15, hang out with Abby Hoffman and did all the goddamn good riots and demonstrations or whatever, and the energy. And what's going on today is so sad. It really is. And I see it in my own work. Okay. I know that, that the computer systems, that they can suppress me, they can threaten me, they can sue me. You know, I'm fighting a lawsuit right now because I asked for public records, and I did it really nicely too. I want you to know. And I won the lawsuit. And the judge, you know, before he said I won, he said to Santa Cruz County, "What are you doing in my court? This should be in Santa Cruz County. And what are you suing? Suing a requester. It's his right to ask. Your job is to give him the record or give him a statutory reason. I rule for Brakey. We win." They appealed it. It cost us $50,000. My lawyer, more than me. Okay. And we're in the appellate courts, and they're going to lose there. But it's a matter of tying up. And they've frozen all the records in the state of Arizona. Nobody's allowed to get a cast vote record now, which was a public record. I've been getting them since 2007. Okay. And it is incredible. And all of this is just going to add to the cynicism. Nobody's going to believe the results at the very end. Okay. And we're going to have violence like we've never seen. Okay. This is the way it looks to me. And I work all over the country and I see what's going on. And I'm scared for my children. I'm scared for the fact that if there's a nuclear war, Biden will have to be woke up at night and he'll have 6 minutes to make a decision.
Right. Well, let's hope that as in 2020, thanks to your work and a lot of the stuff we just heard in the past hour, that when certain forces claim that the election was stolen, that we will be 100% certain that it was not.
And prepared to give the record. They make every county not destroy ballot images. That when they start the canvass election night, the results are unofficial. 7 to 10 days later, they become official. You can't go to the boxes. I know you can't, but God damn it, I can have you in those ballot images, lickety split by precinct, and do it in a matter of a couple of hours.
Well, we got it. We had our act together in 2020. You know, the COVID may have saved American democracy because we had mailed in paper ballots.
Yep.
And they couldn't use the voting machines, and 80-90% of the ballots in the country were delivered by mail, which was a turning point. So we've got to deal with that now. It's now, May, and we have till November. And as Bill Clinton once said, 5 months is a lifetime in politics.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks to your work and these calls, we know exactly what has to be done to protect the ballot. We didn't know that.
And that's why the Attorney General's Association is where we want to hit really hard. Educate them. Bring in a team of experts. People like Barbara Walters out of San Diego, Professor Boris in Arizona, who's a world-known person who deals with conflict resolutions and how we can go ahead and calm it, because we know that transparency is the currency of trust, and we can prove
absolutely. It. And so we kind of keep the magicians from stealing in the election, but this is incredibly important. So I don't have to tell you. Go ahead, MYLA, and then Wendy. Or was it Wendy first? I don't remember.
Can I just say, I'm speaking on behalf of Stephen Kalmanini, who writes in the chat that he's interested in reading more about your FOIA case, John, and he'd like to know where he can read more about it.
On what now?
About your FOIA case, about your legal case.
What case now? The Santa Cruz case or the ballot images?
Both.
Both. Okay. Well, best thing really, go to my Facebook page is the easiest to find it. And then also on my Audit USA Facebook page. Okay. But I would use my personal, and you dive right down through there. You'll find press releases. You know, I keep everything pretty much tightened up, you know, out there. And also my site, even though it updates through Facebook. And that's www.auditusa.org.
Can you put that in the chat?
Yeah, I certainly can. I certainly
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, MYLA. Very good. Wendy, we got 6 minutes.
Okay.
Anybody else want to jump in? Now's the time.
Thank you. So I raised my hand for something else for the last conversation, but I just would like to say with John, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, if anything could cause a battle, it would be the election. So I think it would be really great to get not only the state attorneys like we had talked about, but also any progressive candidates. And that brings it back to Assange, because that's why all the Democrats and the left are afraid of election integrity because of what happened with the DNC and Hillary, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, the ninjas. So it's a matter of just dispelling myths and, you know, getting people to see past, you know, what they believe to be true and open up their vision of possibilities to what else might be truth and work together. What I did want to say about the campuses, you know, we were watching the UCLA riots, and I saw a lot of reports where they just went on for hours and hours and hours, where you had rioters infiltrating and attacking the peaceful protesters, and there's a lot of document of this, and then the police just stood down. And what for me was really disturbing was the news reports on basically normalizing the police not intervening, like what happened in Uvalde and other places, where it was like a very subtle way of condoning vigilante violence. And I saw that on the media with these instances. I do want to tie this in with Cop City and remind everyone that the cops at Cop City are trained by the offensive forces, and thousands of US police have been to Israel to get the training. The military they've found leaked documents that our police is receiving intelligence and directives from military, and it's not like a both sides thing. So just like they're infiltrating CNN and other news outlets, they're also infiltrating the police. And so I tie this in with Cop City because there's 69 more Cop Cities planned in all but 3 states. All but 3 states will have $100 million facility designed to suppress urban warfare. This is the motive they need to convince people that we need military police in every state, on every corner. This isn't even about the genocide. Like right now, like right now, Rafah, the safe zone, is being bombed as we speak. 1 million people are being bombed as we speak, and they're focusing on suppressing these students and ruining their lives forever by taking away their education and their futures for speaking out. And so essentially you have a foreign government dictating our laws with what can be considered anti-Semitic if you condemn the government of Israel and our First Amendment, but then to violently oppress students on the anniversary of Kent State being directed by a foreign government because they're speaking out against their tax dollars going to buy bombs instead of taking care of ourselves. There's so many nuances to this, but stop Cop City, ceasefire now. We need peace, and we need to get away from everything else dividing us and distracting us, or we're done. We're done. So thank you.
Okay. And remember also, we got to shut all the nuclear plants, convert to renewable energy as fast as possible, and stop taxing people for using electricity that comes from technologies that's destroying the planet. This was quite a session. It was really, really great to have Ken Bennett with John Brakey. They have really changed the world and are saving democracy. been great. We had over 50 people the whole time. And we will see you next week. And in 1 month, we will definitely have a national gathering on how to protect this up, how to do this upcoming election right. And I want to again commemorate the historic occasion where this people on this call have been in solidarity with Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the Pillow Guy. Everybody have a good rest. We'll see you next week. No nukes, no more stolen elections. Thank you, John. Thank you,
That's what
everybody.
we call a triple threat.
Yeah, at least. All right, you guys. See you next week. Oh, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for engineering. Go ahead. MYLA, go ahead.
See you in 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll see you in 2.5 hours on that show. And please do support the YouTube thing, right, MYLA? You have a word on that?
You can go to YouTube and look for The Letter Hack. Subscribe to his channel. He's a great guy, and he will be interviewing Harvey and drawing Harvey. And he is the person who drew the cartoon me that you're looking at right now. And he's a great guy, and I'm really looking forward to this interview. So please join us.
I see Harvey in this picture. He's right there in the back.
No nukes, no nukes, everybody. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Wendy, for the crew, and we'll see you next week.
See you later. No nukes. Stay safe, everybody.
Shut the app
100%
up, for God's
renewable
sake.
energy.
And shut Palo Verde, for God's sakes.
Health states.
Thank you, Sluggo. Thank everybody.
Okay, you guys.
No nukes.
Wendy, everybody else go toke up and get relaxed, and we'll see you in a couple hours on the letter hack.
Right.